a little bit less on the airwaves, I suppose.
I've been staring at your cover for the past 20 minutes, just drinking in the goodness of it. It is so good. Thank you so, so, so much. It is so amazing. Everyone is so happy with it. It is absolutely beautiful.
I'm so happy to hear that. I do a fair amount of work for hire and freelance work, and you just never know. It's not really how I feel about it. It's really up to the client. You just never know when you hit the send button how it's gonna work. I've had great stories and not great ones, so I'm very glad everybody's happy with it. I'm happy with it. I think it turned out. I'm very happy with how it turned out too. So ultimately it's up to you guys whether it works or not, but from my end I'm very happy with it as well. So hopefully the next step is the fans.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I think that honestly, maybe I should just introduce you and we'll save it for the little talk here. So, all right. Hey guys, I am so excited today. We are literally going to pull the rug out from under you. I have Jim Rugg here with me to announce my new exciting project that he has supplied an amazing cover for. It is beautiful. I cannot wait to share this project with you guys. I'm so happy to talk to Jim about it. And welcome, Jim. It is so nice to see you again and get a chance to talk to you again. Since the last time we talked, the Treasury-sized edition of Hulk Grand Design has come out, and as I predicted, that is the format it was meant to be in. It is absolutely beautiful. It is stunning. It looks amazing in the comic book store. That bright green glaring from across the room, and it's funny because we talked about the anticipation of it, and to see it like unfold is very exciting. Now that the gamma radiation is subsiding, how do you feel in the fallout?
I'm thrilled with how that turned out. Marvel gave me a lot of leeway on that project from soup to nuts. Every step of the way, they allowed me to do what I wanted to do, and they let me design the book. So, in my mind, like I was picturing that bright green object that would stand out on the shelf and just kind of almost glow if you were near it. And you never quite know how these things are going to go until you actually get a hard copy in your hands. I don't do enough print work to be confident that, like, okay, what I have in my head is how it's going to come off the press. So it's always like the big moment of reveal whenever I actually get the hard copy and get to see it. And I'm thrilled with how that book turned out. It's everything I wanted it to be. And I thank Marvel for, supporting me and kind of helping me get that vision into an actual book. And I'm glad to hear that you agree. The response has been really positive to it. And it's exactly what I wanted to make. So I often say, these things may not be for everyone, but you like that book or you don't like that book based on what I made, based on what I wanted to make. So it turned out the way I wanted it to. And now it's up to the fans to decide whether that's, they want a glowing green object sitting on their shelf or on their coffee table or not. But I'm thrilled with how it turned out. And, that oversized format, I knew from the beginning that's what we were aiming for, because Ed and Tom Scioli had both done grand designs, and they were in that treasury-sized format. And I've got, a collection of like the Marvel 70s Treasury editions. I love that oversized format. So, from the beginning, that's what I was aiming for. And it's thrilling to actually get it. Like I say, once you get it in your hands, that's kind of like that great moment of really years of work. So it's I couldn't be happier with it.
No, it would be super. And you may have done a sort of version of this on Kayfabe, and I think I asked you about it before, and of course you were open to it. But of course, the artist edition would be amazing for one, and for two, the grand design omnibus treasury size with you, Ed, and Tom's all together. I mean, not only would it be the heaviest book in history, it would be the most expensive book in history too. But I would gladly pay for that. So
I'm on board for both of those. Sign, where do I sign, Michael?
I know. And Fantasy Island, where I usually am when it comes to comic book projects, which is sort of how my new project that you're here to help me announce came about. So Jim is supplying the cover. I am editing and publishing with Cosmic Lion Productions via Kickstarter, a Big Bang Comics Anthology. in line with Gary Carlson. Gary Carlson is the Jiminy Cricket of the book. He's been like so invaluable to helping me organize this and put it together. It's I don't know. I was interviewing Gary Carlson and I just like I was peripherally aware of Big Bang Comics. For people who don't know, I feel like people who are watching this or watch your channel, like a lot of people know, but a lot of people don't know, or a lot of people just sort of, oh yeah, I've kind of heard of that. But not only do they have amazing comic books, but they also have like this crazy, weird, rich history of like cultivating artists in a way. Like, you know, it was the launch pad for like Eric Larson, for Rob Liefeld, for Angel Medina on books like Berserker and Megaton and Vanguard. And so, you know, Gary, those are sort of his characters. Some are Eric Larson's, some they co-own. But of course, Eric wanted to do the dragon. And then Gary, actually, his partner, Chris Ecker, who is a huge part of Big Bang Comics and equal to Gary in every way, shape, and form. It's basically their baby. And once the Megaton thing kind of ended, that with the Larson and the Rob Liefeld and stuff, they wanted to explore like the older, more like retro heroes of the Big Bang universe. So Megaton became Big Bang. And they've published in various forms for the past 30 years. Mostly, you know, Gary Carlson initially self-publishing, but then they were at Caliber Press. They were at Image for a long time. You know, but that was during like the 90s implosion and stuff. And they had to like lose color because it got expensive. And then, you know, he had to abandon it. And since then, they've had various things, but his main gig now is through Indie Planet. And so he just loves comics. He just wants to keep going. And they've kind of evolved. They've gotten a little more modern, a little away from their retro. I'm sorry, I'm so rambling, but now they're doing like a little more modern stuff. But I love the retro stuff. I love that stuff. I think it's the flavor. Like that was the whole impetus for Gary Carlson. You know, I feel this way, and I'm sure you do too. We love and are beholden to the comic books that we were introduced to. You know what I mean? I'm like an 80s kind of Art Adams, you know, John Byrne kind of guy. But Gary was like, you know, reading comics in the 60s. So those are the comic books that he loves and the ones he wanted to create. And doing my research for this book, like they are so good. Like they appear to be like just analogs. Like they have their version of Superman, Batman, all that kind of stuff. But there's so much more than that. So were you aware of Big Bang to what extent before I reached out to you?
So everything you said, I am on board with. You know, I was a huge Eric Larson fan, and of course, Dragon appears in some of the Megaton stuff. So like I was aware of Megaton. Then I got into like the 80s black and white comics, and you mentioned Berserker. So, you know, like these are some things that I have, you know, have had in my collection for decades at this point. So I was very conscious of it. We actually looked at an issue of Vanguard recently. I don't think we've posted the video on Cartoonist Kayfabe, but we looked at an issue of Vanguard from Image Comics that Joe Madureira drew. So it's not Joe Madureira's first comic, but it's still very early in his career, you know, speaking to that point of you name Rob Liefeld and Eric Larson and Angel Medina. Joe Madureira is another guy that early on does a really nice story there on I think that's an Eric Larson, Gary Carlson character. So, you know, I was aware of that kind of history. And then over the years, I've bought stuff like I have the first several issues of the Caliber run. I'm a fan of Caliber Comics. Anybody unfamiliar with Caliber? They were an indie company out of Michigan. The Crow is probably one of their giant books, Dead World, but they published for probably 2 decades or so. And because maybe of its close proximity to Pittsburgh, the Caliber books were something that I would see early on when I started to look at like black and white indie books. And interestingly, the Big Bang comics that they published were in color. So kind of a wrinkle in what Caliber did. But it's funny, I've been thinking about Big Bang a lot in conjunction with doing this cover and how many superhero universes show up in the early 90s, you know, Ultraverse and Comics Greatest World at Dark Horse. And it seemed like every publisher was trying to launch some kind of universe. It's interesting to think of Big Bang as being the one that really sticks around. And to your point, you know, they do have these analogous characters Ultraman being kind of the Superman character, Night Watchman being like the Batman type character. But they also have like the weirder stuff, by folding in something like Berserker or having, Dr. Weird coming out of like fandom into Big Bang. It's more than just the surface level of having a couple of these characters that are like, oh, we're inspired by, Silver Age DC or something like that. It's kind of this weird, over the decades, this weird collection of characters, some that are very 90s, or at least the treatments are very 90s, some that are very 80s. And I think that makes for a really rich tapestry for a universe. And I don't know if it's an organic quality or what, how they survive that 90s, like, speculator implosion. But whatever it is, like, it's very interesting to me that this is one of the superhero universes that has decades of history behind it. And that's very rich as a comics fan, that you can, if you identify with one of these characters or you want to learn more, there are a lot more stories out there. There are spin-off solo series, and some of those are really interesting. Like Night Watchman is one of those, I guess it must have been a 90s series, but it's clearly inspired by Frank Miller and The Dark Knight, but also like, it's really rad looking, and very far outside of that Silver Age look. So I enjoy that part of it. And I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but I'm a big fan of like the Image series 1963. And there's a 1963 crossover in Big Bang Comics. So there aren't a lot of appearances of those 1963 characters. And if you're a completist, at some point, you have to go find the back issue of Big Bang Comics that has 1963 characters appearing in it.
I think that sells for a lot. It's the one with, I know Jim Valentino did the cover. I know exactly what you're talking about, but I think he did do the interiors too. But yeah, it's weird because I was sort of, yeah,
visual aids for everybody.
There you go.
But even getting like a inclusion in the masthead there, the 1963 logo. So pretty interesting history. Like I say, it's a very rich history, and that appeals to me as a comic book nerd.
Yeah, I was not allowed to include any 1963 elements in
Sure.
my Big Bang. Because he does have an interesting history, because sometimes characters were brought into the fold that were like owned by other people, and created by different people. Like we couldn't use Mighty Man, even though Gary co-owns him. No Vanguard. Berserker, thank God, was on the table, because like, oh my gosh, like, not only, okay, so another part of like this anthology that I wanted to do is because I wanted a physical copy. I mean, through Indie Planet, it's print on demand and you can get a physical copy, but it's like my pop art love letter to Gary Carlson. It's going to be Treasury-sized, inspired by you. And because it has to be, you know what I mean? It just, I don't know. This is like one of my fantasy projects coming true. So I want it to be, it's a big, beautiful art book, but I wanted it to have substance too. So there's a bunch of little stories in there, but a lot of, pinups too, just because I'm such a huge fan of like the old Marvel fanfare, and I always love those great pinups. I mean, you see those pinups just being shared constantly all the time still to this day, just like but I didn't want it to be all fluff either, you know what I mean? So I've got some amazing talent. Not only do we have a gorgeous cover by Jim Rugg, we have a gorgeous alternate cover by the amazing Carrie Callan, who I was like a peripheral fan of his, and someone had suggested to me that he would be a good fit for Big Bang. So come to find out, Gary like really loves his work and was happy to get him on board. And then we have an amazing centerfold by Nick Cagnetti of Berserker. That's amazing. Do you want to see a sneak preview of it?
Yes, I do. I've been packing for Heroes Con, a big convention that I'm doing is coming up. And I actually did a variant cover for Nick Cagnetti's Pink Lemonade several years ago. So had to pull that one out of my storage.
This is a work in progress. Can you see it?
Yes.
It's going to be insane. Like, I gave him the smallest little thumbnail and he blasted me with this beauty.
That's very fun. I feel like that's very reflective of his style.
And a Berserker pinup work in progress from Barry Tan. the amazing
Wow.
Barry Tan, who did such a gorgeous job on your Street Angel for
Barry Tan's
Image.
amazing. Yeah, I've been really admiring everything I see of his.
I have to say to anybody out there who's putting together like an anthology or anything like that and wants to get really great art from your artist, hire Jim Rugg to do the cover. Because what if once the artist knew that you were like doing the cover, they're like, oh shit, I gotta like up my game here, like 100%. So I'm happy to use you as like the hamburger on the stick or whatever, or the dangling carrot.
That's good. I do a lot of cover work, and it's like I don't have any control over what's inside of those books. So if this whole book turns out to be spectacular, and it sounds like it's going to, that's awesome. Those are the best kind of books to do a cover for, something that you can be proud of all the way through.
I didn't want it to be the quintessential gift wrap turd. You know what I mean? I was just like, yeah, because I didn't want, I know so many times, like I've like amazing. Yeah, it is a crap shot, for you. You're like just praying that it's not a piece of shit. And I'm happy to report that it's not. Like, it's beautiful. It's breathtaking. A lot of the artists come from the Kayfabe community, some of the fan artists and some of the self-publishers that I really love. Just like crazy, like James Windsor Smith, Tony McMillan, Missimo, Barry Tan, like, and I feel like I have my heavy hitters with you and Carrie Callan and Nick Cagnetti. And then I have like an overwhelming amount of talent that people just aren't familiar with yet. So I just think that it's kind of a fun project. And it also kind of echoes, like, it's very Ben Kismet in a kind of way, because it kind of echoes the path of Big Bang Comics in a way. You know what I mean? Because I was shooting for like 64 pages, because that's what Gary used to do. It was just basically like an annual, like he'd do a megaton, and like just through him putting it together himself was able to do like probably one a year, and they usually wound up to be 64 pages. So that was my guideline, but we'll see how it lives and breathes and grows. I don't know. I don't know if you're familiar with Uncle Jerk, a fellow YouTuber. He does these amazing comic book deep dives. He did this great one on Mario Goli, the ant artist. And he's writing the introduction for the book. So I'm just like spreading it as far and wide as I possibly can. I want to remind people of Big Bang and sort of re-excite people about Big Bang. And, Gary sent me a bunch of PDFs of the old stuff, and I just was overwhelmed how really good they were. And it's interesting too, because not only do they sort of homage the characters, but a lot of them like will appropriately sort of homage the style of the artist. Like, there's this character named Beacon who's sort of like a Green Lantern character, and the artist is almost mimicking Gil Kane in a way, but not a
That's a
complete
tall order.
Tall order indeed, I know, but there's stuff like that all over it, and it's just like, it is really crazy, actually, in a lot of ways.
I can't speak for the other artists that are involved, but that Treasury edition thing is something that really stood out to me whenever we started talking about doing the cover. When I learned it was a Treasury size, like, that's very appealing to me as an artist, because it's a bigger canvas. It's a chance to stretch, it's a chance to show off, quite frankly. And I would imagine that a lot of the artists, you talk about them like really delivering A plus work. I bet they're inspired to be able to work that size. It's very exciting to get to, show your work a little bit bigger, and whether that means more detail, more complex page layouts, whatever the case may be. I know it's something that I get very excited to work on that larger canvas. So I imagine that many of the artists feel the same way. It's, if everything could be Treasury size, right? But it's a special format.
It is a special format. And, I had mentioned, like, because I have sort of a pop art aesthetic, like, it really appeals to me. The other thing that I love about the Treasury size is that Andy Warhol's Interview magazine was in that size and format. So that's sort of in the back of my mind too, visually speaking. But yeah, you're right. I know, because I thought, like, one of the benefits of drawing large and shrinking it is that it sort of gives, like, I don't know, pulls together the detail in a way but you know, just like having experienced these artist editions and these treasury size, it's just incomparable. You know what I mean? It's just so fun to see the art that big and gorgeous. I just really love it. Um, one of the things you, sorry to get off topic for a second, but one of the things you posted recently that I loved, that I had no idea that you did, that was so cool, was the and I guess it was for the Blu-ray, the cover for Return to the Valley of the Dolls. Like the one of the biggest gay camp classics ever. Like it's such a great movie. How on earth did you, is that, how old is that, and how did you get involved in that?
I don't remember how old it is. It's been several years, and every now and then I'll see it float, across social media, and I'll share it, and it always gets a good response. Of course, that movie has a heck of a following. But Eric Skillman, the art director from Criterion, that's who put out that cover. We've known each other for a long time. Like we did a panel together at Heroes, the upcoming show that I keep plugging. We did a panel on design there many, many years ago, probably a decade ago, maybe. And, kept in touch. We're both fans of design work, both fans of comics. And that was just a project that I guess, when it crossed his desk, he thought of me. And whenever he contacted me, I jumped at it. It's a legendary movie. And to be honest, I had not seen it before I took on the project. So I was like, yes. And then I ran out and watched it twice that night. And I was just so impressed by the color. I'm such a fan of color. Like when I started making comics, color was prohibitively expensive. If you were going to be an indie artist or self-publishing, you just couldn't, color was a dream that existed for Marvel and DC and superheroes, but not for the person making mini comics. And that changed a lot, with technology and international printing. From the time I did my first book until a couple of years later, I did a color book, and it was like, well, if you're going to do this yourself, you've got to learn about color. And I knew a little bit, I had minored in painting in college, and my background's design. So, I was familiar with color, but I hadn't done a lot of color in comics. And since then I've just fallen in love with it. I feel like it's such a stimulant for the eyes, and it's something that I love. And so watching Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, that was the first thing that popped out to me, between that and the period elements. And it's almost, there's such a cartoony theatrical quality to that movie. It's just I don't know what you wouldn't like about it. And if you're coming at it from a visual standpoint, it's a feast for your eyes. So yeah, that was just a really exciting, fun project. And it kind of lined up with a lot of my visual sensibilities. So, a good art director, they know they're able to connect artists with the right prompts or the right assignments. And Eric Skillman saw something in my work that he thought would fit that movie. And I'm very grateful that he did, because it's one of my favorite freelance projects I've ever done. So definitely a very exciting one. And like I say, if you follow me, you'll probably see it pop up once every year or two. It kind of, I like to share that and remind everybody that I did it, because I'm very proud of that cover.
I'm happy to see it any time it pops up.
And I don't know if you realize it or not, but I hand lettered it. Like it's part of the original art is actually the lettering that's on there. So, it combines all of my loves are visible on that cover.
I know. It's funny because Brian Payne, one of the artists in the book, he's such a great cartoonist. He's actually part of the reason that I'm doing the whole thing. When I was looking for gigs or whatever, he suggested I contact Gary Carlson. And this is like years ago. And it wound up not working out for whatever reason. So I'm glad that we're able to do that. But he did hand lettering, and he did 3 2-page stories, and they're all hand lettered. And I love hand lettering so much. I mean, so there, at least we have a little bit of that in there too. Yeah, I definitely was trying, when I pitched you to do this cover, I was definitely trying to appeal to some of your, I knew that the Treasury would appeal to you. I mean, how could it not? Obviously you're a fan of them. But also, initially my first pitch to you was I kind of wanted a white background group shot, kind of Art Adams kind of thing. But then but coupled with the caveat that it shouldn't be an homage, because Gary doesn't really like homages. But I think you had said before that you didn't want to do an homage, and I was very happy to hear that, because I know that homages are a big part of your wheelhouse, but I thought, you know, like it's such a special project. It should be like a Jim Rugg original. And I'm so glad that you came up with the genius concept that I would have never come up with. And let's just go ahead and show everybody the damn cover. So, I mean, it's going to be in the thumbnail anyway, so we might as well. This is it. Oh, wait, before I do that, a pinup from Marty Keene, the bootleg Spider-Man artist. I mean, can you believe it? That's why I wanted this to be as eclectic and crazy as possible. And I asked him, and he returned it so quick and nailed it on every single level. Like, I think he's an unqualified genius, to be honest with you. That is so cool. And that
it's a great piece. I really love the color. It's one of the things that appeals to me going through Big Bang Comics. If you watch cartoonist Kayfabe, you know that I complain a lot about coloring that's brown or muddy or gray.
Yeah.
And that is not something I see, at least not in the Big Bang Comics that I have. So, you know,
yeah,
it's nice. That pinup is great for showing off some color.
That was one of my directives to a lot of my artists. Like, I don't want this dark. It's a bright, beautiful superhero comic book. And you gave a bright, beautiful superhero comic book cover. Sorry for the glare, everybody. Don't worry, you'll be able to see it. But this is Jim Rugg's amazing cover with a baseball card theme, which we are turning a package of Jim Rugg Big Bang baseball cards into one of the Kickstarter incentives, along with the gorgeous covers. So you have just another reason. I mean, how cool is that? Like, Big Bang, like, it's the perfect vehicle for trading cards, like with their nostalgia angle and stuff. So how quickly did you come up with that? Like, was it a no-brainer for you, or?
I don't remember the origins of that. You know, if you recall, I submitted a couple of sketches, and one was a traditional, like, let's do the superhero group shot, which is a real challenge because, you know, there are so many superhero comic books out there. The group shot really is something like, if you want to test yourself, come up with a good group shot composition, because, you know, you're up against everybody from Jack Kirby to Jim Lee. You know, everybody has done versions of that.
George Perez comes to mind.
Yes, absolutely. The list could go on and on. Alex Ross, you know, like, it's really, if you've done superhero comics, you've probably done that kind of superhero group shot. So it's hard to do something that really stands out, I think, in that, you know, with that being the directive. But I did one that I liked. So that was one of the sketches that I submitted. And then I don't know why the trading cards came up. I've done some trading card stuff before. Like, I did a Street Angel, the Street Angel Gang was a story I did where the end papers are trading cards, you know, because it's a big cast of characters in that book. And it's all these different gangs that are sort of like interacting. So they all have their own style of trading cards. And that was kind of a fun project for me. And then whenever I started thinking about trading cards, part of it was the Treasury-sized edition. And I thought, I knew the number of characters that we wanted to show on the cover. And it's a matter of how do you give them all, you know, really give them some space, but also that you could do the trading cards at trading card size. And I think there's a real power to kind of like the physical qualities of these objects, whether it's comic books, trading cards, any of this stuff. And if it's not the size of a trading card and you're holding that cover in your hands, because ultimately that's what this, you know, that's the end result is you see this, you own this book, you pick it up, you feel something. And so the trading cards have to be trading card size. When you're holding that cover in your hands, those trading cards on the cover are trading card size. So, you know, I hope that it really kind of creates that feeling and that sense of nostalgia or childhood, or who knows, Jim Lee's X-Men cards. You know what I mean? Like, we all have some connection to trading cards, I think. It'd be hard to be a comics fan, especially a long time comics fan, and not have interacted with trading cards somewhere along the way. And I thought it was a way to kind of like present these characters as a bit iconic. You know, that was something I wanted to bring to the cover, is like, these are characters with a history, you know, like this is a shared universe kind of collection of characters. So how do we, you know, bring some of that history or make them feel like they've been around? And I thought the trading cards would be a good way to do it. And if you look closely, like, I looked at a bunch of trading cards, you know, for reference from like old sports cards from the 60s. Mars Attacks was a big one for me. And if you look at the lettering is based on the Mars Attacks trading cards.
Interesting. Yeah, I love the lettering. I was wondering what your thought process behind that was. I know when she mentioned the Mars Attacks, I was super excited about that. The other reason I think it works well is because you know, like you said, like Berserker standing next to Venus in a group shot is weird. You know what I mean? So like
Sure.
it is weird that they're in the same universe. So it is kind of a good way to put them all together and have it make sense. And I just to like Dr. Weird is so much fun. Ultiman looks so handsome and heroic. I freaking love Megaton's washboard abs. My God, that is crazy. And the glow effect of his hand is so cool. Like you know, part of the magic of Jim Rugg is you're able to just always, I don't know, nail it. You know what I mean? You just got everything so good. Like when you posted the black and white teaser of Berserker, I lost my mind. I was like, oh my God, that is so cool. It looks so good. And it's just really exciting. Another favorite here is Protoplasman.
Very fun to
And
draw him.
you sick bastard, though, with the Adam's apple and then in the neck bone. I was like, oh, that's disgustingly gorgeous. I love it. Yeah, he actually has a really fun story in the book by this crazy cartoonist, Jason Foster, that is, I'm collaborating with him on it, and it's just going to be hysterical.
Anyone who draws him, like crazy cartoonist, sounds like that should be a requirement if you're going to draw
Yeah.
Protoplasm Man.
There was no other option for the artist on that story, and once you see it you'll understand why. But I love his little like ballerina slippers and or I mean judo shoes or whatever. And then Night Watch, man, you definitely did channel a little of the sort of Frank Miller kind of feel there for sure. Al Diablo. My one of my favorite artists in the book is doing a kind of a longer story with El Diablo, and you oddly nailed like kind of the background colors that he's doing in the story. So it kind of like that made me super happy. And was excited to hear about the trading card thing because he said he was obsessed with those really crappy Marvel cards. Remember the ones with the bad art? Like they had ones with really good art, and then they had ones with bad art. So he was obsessed with those. So that just goes to show that like comic book fans, you know, have different appeals for everything. Ultra Girl, I think that's the one famously drawn by like Rob Liefeld. And she's I love, okay, so Ultraman started out as Ultraman, but obviously they had to change that. But I like that they left Ultra Girl, Ultra Girl. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, that was one of those details. I kept looking at it when I had all the cards together on the cover, and I'm like, wait a minute, is it Alta Girl? Did I do this? Did I misspell this? And I like that difference. You know, it kind of, again, it lends itself. When I did a book called Aphrodisiac years ago, and it was emulating a lot of like 70s coloring techniques, which involved like color separations and dots and all this stuff, and you can do it perfectly digitally. And I used to say like it's selling the lie, you know, putting in mistakes so that it looks like it's analog, it looks like it's on paper, it looks old. You know, it's selling the lie because that's real life. And I kind of feel like Ultra Girl's name being Ultra Girl instead of Alta Girl, it's kind of selling the lie, you know, like it's giving it that real life piece of like, oh, this is how the world goes. You know, the
Mm-hmm.
best intentions are we match up the names and everything, but then the reality is, oh, we can't use this one name here, and you end up with these slightly different names. And in a way, it brings it to life in a way.
That makes sense. That's funny. I love that. um, Thunder Girl looks very cute. I love her too.
She was very
She,
fun to draw. I enjoyed. I shouldn't talk when you hold those up, but I enjoyed doing like the clouds in the background on her was very fun. And you know, one of the nice things with the trading card motif is that you can draw a little bit differently on each one, or you could do a super close up, you know, which adds to some variety. Where if they're all standing together in a group shot, maybe they're all the same size, which then you have to figure out how do you keep that from being boring. Once you do trading cards, it's like you could imagine different artists are drawing these. I used all my tools for this stuff. Thunder Girl was done with a Japanese pen nib, and it's kind of like these light lines, and it was just a real pleasure to draw her.
yeah, she's super cute and like interesting. Like it's weird because the amalgams or the analogs or the whatever are usually like a double shot. You know what I mean? It's like because Night Watchman could also be a little bit Daredevil, Batman and Daredevil, and Thunder Girl is Supergirl, but also sort of the Captain Marvel because you know I forgot what she says to change into Thunder Girl. Oh my god, it's so bad.
Cut that part.
I know. Yeah. So yeah. So I don't know. So I think that this is good. And by the way, everybody, the Kickstarter is launching July 15th for this book. You're definitely gonna want to get in on that. I'm spending the rest of the entire time until then and through then building momentum and blowing this up. Big Bang has never had a Kickstarter before. And Gary said that, you know, he had considered it in the past. So I really want this to be a success for him. I'm doing this all for Gary Carlson, by the way. I mean, I just think that his contribution to comics, if you really dissect it, is like insurmountable. And I just think he deserves this love letter, you know, this big, gorgeous Treasury-sized book. He's so proud of all his characters and he loves his universe so much. And he's such a good writer. Like, I'll be like, okay, hey, I have this 2-page story and this is happening, but I don't want this to happen. How can I make that not happen? And he'll be like, in 2 seconds later, he'll be like, do this. And it'll be something like completely genius that I never thought of before. But I also feel very protective too, because he's very protective. So it's like, I've had, you know, artists come back with like, you know, can I do this? And I'm like, no, that's too violent. I'm like, this is Big Bang. And it's weird because I don't know, maybe Big Bang did go violent in a little way. You know, you referenced like the Frank Miller Night Watchman stuff from the 90s. I mean, that was pretty heavy, Frank Miller. So I'm guessing that stuff must have been kind of violent, but, and not to be a prude, but I don't know if it's necessarily all ages, but I definitely know like it would have been like a comic book that as a young reader, if I would have picked up, I would have been really excited about the art and the characters and stuff. So I think it's really fun.
Is there going to be, I don't know if it'd be in the intro or back matter or something, but an interview or a profile of Gary Carlson in the book?
There is. Yes. It's I think that Uncle Jerk is doing that as part of his thing. We haven't finalized that yet, but definitely there is going to be some sort of profile or interview or some sort of piece by him, because I really want his input. You know, like I said, this is his book. Chris Ecker, his partner, who is the creator of Night Watchman, actually, he doesn't draw much anymore, but he wrote a 3-page story for another artist to draw, and he supplied these thumbnails, and like they're sick. They're like I could almost print them. They're just so gorgeous. So I've been happy to have like their involvement, and I, you know, fully invited them to be involved as much or, you know, little as they want. You know, unfortunately, Gary has had some health issues recently. He's doing pretty good, but you know, I don't want to burden him with like, you know, deadlines and stuff like that. So I just want him to really enjoy this, and as a fan and a creator.
As a fan, will there be a checklist? It'd be awesome to have like a Big Bang checklist, you know, tucked away in the back cover, or some random page. You know how Marvel and like all those old Silver Age would have some text pages that would be, you know, Stan soapbox kind of stuff, or the checklist of like what books are coming out that month. It'd be interesting to see the bibliography, you know, in a checklist form of Big Bang and the spinoff comics like Night Watchmen and stuff like that. That could be kind of a neat little page in there somewhere.
Well, how can I not at that suggestion? That sounds great. Yeah, I do. I know I want it to be as juicy as possible, and I'm including like a sketchbook section just because that's something that I love, like kind of a behind the scenes. Because you know, it's weird because I mean, who the hell am I? I've never done something crazy like this before, and like it's been a very gratifying experience and an exciting one too. Just like seeing new art come in and artists getting excited about sharing their thumbnails or their pencils and then their inks and their works in progress. And but there's so much great design work and layouts, and like some stories and some images, like I supplied like little thumbnails or little layouts, or other people did. So I always love to see like where it came from and where it went, you know what I mean? So I just think that'll be a fun part. So yeah, in addition to pinups and you know, stories, that we'll have the the I don't know, retrospective by Uncle Jerk. And then, yes, definitely an interview with Gary and Chris. Um, and now a Big Bang checklist. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to be a good book.
It sounds like it. It sounds like you have enough for a couple of books there. And I have some ideas. Maybe we'll talk off air of possible promotional items you can do, or some other stuff with all that extra artwork that you're talking about, because I feel like I'd like to look at some of that. So I'm sure I'm not the only person,
it's
that
funny
feels that way.
I tried to be very, very respectful for you. Once we hammered out the details, you said, okay, I'm going to work on this. You'll hear from me soon. And then I was like, okay, Jim, go do your thing. And as I'm getting art and stuff in, like, I definitely 100% want to share it with you as the cover artist and just I'll send you everything. Don't worry. I'll send it to you after we get off. But because I was actually very excited to share it with you for the reason we talked about is that I wanted you to see and be happy to know that you are a part of something. This is your cover is worthy of this book, or I mean, this book is worthy of your cover. My bad.
Both ways. That works. It should work both ways. It's exciting too, I think, for people because, like, I don't know the last time I've heard Big Bang. I don't know if there's other new Big Bang stuff that's come out over the last couple of years or not. But it's nice to do a project like this because I'm sure will reach some new fans who are unfamiliar with Big Bang Comics. It's a way to kind of continue the legacy of Big Bang Comics. I just read John B. Cook just did a book with Tomorrows about Charlton Comics, and you realize like these histories of these various comics, like they're not well preserved. Like you need somebody to come along now and then and do, here's an exciting book. Let's remind everybody that Big Bang, it's not just a cool new project, but it also has this history, and it's been there, being released simultaneously with the early 90s boom and all these superhero universes. It's like Big Bang was there too, and they've persevered and they've had all these artists come through. And I think it's great to do these kinds of projects that allow a new audience or a new generation to just know, like, it's not just Marvel and DC that have done superheroes or that have done a superhero universe or that cool artists have worked for. And I think it's great to not just preserve that history, but also to put a spotlight on it now and then. And I feel like a project like this can do that for, a history like Big Bang Comics history.
The other exciting thing for me about it was that some of the artists involved were like huge Big Bang fans. So like was like a big fantasy project for them. And like to be able to help facilitate that just makes the project even more meaningful. But I agree with that. It's like, yeah, like I know, like I've been covering random issues. I actually did just cover that Vanguard Joe Madureira one you were talking about, which is such a great series. I love it. The Jason Pearson issue is amazing. But there's very few videos about Big Bang on YouTube. Aside from like interviews with Gary Carlson. So I'm glad to be able to, like you said, get it out there and just have it not be forgotten. You know what I mean? Because they're kind of hard to come by, but I feel like they do pop up a lot in like dollar boxes and stuff.
Right. That's where I end up. I mean, that's how I've gotten a lot of mine. Have you covered issue number 4 from Caliber Comics?
No.
This one is really amazing. You can see probably just from the cover, they do a lot of Silver Age and retro comics, but at this issue, they go like full on early 90s, like almost, what I imagined the 1963 annual was playing with. Big Bang does it. And, it's a full color issue. It's kind of, I don't know how well these colors will hold up on my screen, but, they really committed to this. And so for like what Big Bang is, this is a really great issue. Definitely one to put on your list as a possible one to cover because it's atypical, and in some ways it kind of makes it more clear what these Big Bang characters are by seeing like the dark, distorted reflection of them in their like 90s counterparts. So yeah, it's a fun series. Like you say, they really did do some good stories along the way. And I don't know, what else do you want out of a comic?
And I know, yeah, I know. It's funny because I had mentioned that like the weird twist they do, because I think like there's a lot to unpack there, and I'm kind of exploring this in one of my stories. But like for instance, like Ultraman is this version of Superman. However, he's an Earthling. So that's very like just that alone is like a very interesting sort of twist. You know what I mean? Because the whole premise of Superman is he's a strange visitor from another planet. So if Ultiman is from here, then his perspective is a lot different. You know what I mean? But it's just like fun little things like that. Like, oh my gosh, and the Berserker series is so good. I love that series so much. I'm so glad that he doesn't have like a real big story in the book, but he has a big presence in the way of the centerfold, your image of him on the cover, and then Barry Tan's pinup. What a great character. Oh my God. That's what I'm saying. Like, how can he leave like a character like that languishing? You know what I mean? Like the design is beautiful. I love the detail in his like helmet thing. Like I know you nailed that. I noticed that right away. And it just what a cool character. You know what I mean? A big badass gladiator with a faux hawk. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Yes. And a great name to boot.
For sure. And yeah. So I'm very excited about this book. It is, you know, the Kickstarter starts July 15th. Uh, it's insane how quickly I decided to throw this together, but I just couldn't like birth an elephant. Like I had to have it come out fast and hard. And oh yeah, another incentive, because you had said you weren't aware of their presence lately. They do have a Megaton Chronicles like collection coming out this summer, which is collecting like the original Megaton series being published by Image Comics. So I also felt like, you know, maybe build off of some of that momentum would be good. You know, like, you know, not only do they have that, but they have this great new project, you know. And then I think he did just release an Indie Planet issue, like Big Bang, maybe 21 or something like that. But so they're still here, you know what I mean? But this is definitely calling all YouTubers who want to cover this. Please feel free to contact me and blitz this baby. I want this book to not only be big in size but big in reach. I another thing I could tell you were really happy, and uh, the thing that stood out to me is that you said it was fun for you to get to work on superheroes because you don't get that chance that often. And I don't know why that took me back for took me like surprised me in a way. Like, but then thinking about your catalog, it's like you do cover like so many different genres, and I guess superheroes is very small because Hulk is probably your biggest superhero project, and he's arguably not much of a superhero. You know
I
what I
call him
mean?
a monster, you know. I say that's what makes him different than all the superheroes and even the supervillains. Yeah, I was surprised. You know, I was doing these sketches and I drew them all on individually, you know, like I found original art from the Jim Lee X-Men set, and that's the dimensions I used. And I set up my pages with like blue lines and stuff so they'd all be the same size. But I was drawing each one separately. So, you know, it'd be like sit down and draw Thunder Girl and sit down and draw Dr. Weird. And I realized that was over the course of a couple of days of actually doing the finished drawings. One, it was super fun, but also like halfway through, I realized like, yeah, I don't really draw. I don't know the last time I did superheroes is like just straight kind of superheroes. You know, these are usually whenever I do something that would be a superhero, like I say, Street Angel's a superhero, but she's not wearing spandex and doesn't have giant muscles. And you know what I mean? She doesn't look like a typical superhero. So for the sake of drawing, it's like I'm drawing this street urchin. I'm not drawing I'm not drawing the classic superhero archetype. And with these characters, I was. So turned out to be really fun. You know, I mean, certainly superheroes are what I grew up reading. And art wise, I've gone in different directions, but you don't forget that. So, you know, an excuse to spend a couple of days just drawing classic type superheroes turned out to be much more enjoyable than I expected.
That's what I love about you, and I think that's why like the key to your success and your appeal is like your enthusiasm, not only just your enthusiasm but your whole process. Like you're like you get this thing and you're like not just concerned about you know how how you're going to draw the image, but like how you're going to set up the whole process of designing it and everything like that. you know, like to do the actual trading cards, and just like your process is just like kind of enviable. You know what I mean? It's like, I wish I had sort of that creativity or, you know, desire to do all that. One of the things, and that I still may put in there, if I can pull it off, is I randomly found like they had a mini. Remember those old spirograph things from like the 80s with the weird kaleidoscope designs and stuff? So I found like a mini one, and I thought I would love to do a Dr. Weird pinup with like just a spirograph background.
That's brilliant. That's a great
then it
idea.
ties into like the pen or the ballpoint pen kind of art too. So
I remember I read I want to say it was an Eddie Campbell interview in the Comics Journal, and this would have been 25 years ago, so I might be completely wrong. But they were talking about Steve Ditko's Doctor Strange and some of the oddness that Ditko would bring into backgrounds, and, you know, some of those weird spaces where Doctor Strange would be. And I think Eddie Campbell proposed that like some of those images looked like spirograph, like something that, you know, he was doing something strange to generate those kinds of designs and textures and shapes and things. And I had forgotten about that until you just mentioned a spirograph. It's such a good idea. If I had thought of that, I would have done a Doctor Strange pinup by now with the spirograph background. So that's a great idea for a pinup.
If I can pull it off. I know it's funny because as enamored as I was with spirograph, like I never had one as a kid. So I don't know if it looks like magic to me, but it must work to some extent, right?
Yeah, you know, just let yourself have fun and do, you know, play with it for a little bit and see what comes out, and then make adjustments.
Yeah, there's another, I'll send it to you because I don't want to spoil it on here, because there's another like really fun part of the book that's like sort of outside of the box in that way, but ties into it perfectly at the same time. I might as well just tell you, it's like a Venus paper doll spread.
That's a good idea.
Because and this is so crazy too, because I had originally asked Trina Robbins to do it.
That's the first name I thought of when you were describing that. You know, I think of her Wonder Woman and stuff, and it seems, I don't know,
it just seemed perfect for the Venus character. And so she was like totally gonna do it, but then I sent her like some of the research material, and she thought it was a derivative ripoff, or for some reason she just like decided she didn't want to do it. So then there's this writer I know named Mike Badrid. He's written several novels about comic books, mostly about femme fatales and female heroes and stuff. And during the pandemic, he started posting like his Zoom art, and I didn't even know he was an artist, and I like really love his art. So I thought after Trina bowed out, even though he's not really known as an artist, he would be the perfect person to do this paper doll spread. And as it turns out, I was right.
That's a great looking page.
And it's a double page spread. It has like her 60s look, like, because it, you know, it echoes kind of Wonder Woman. He even did a 90s look, which is killing me. I love it. Like, that's low-key my favorite one right there. And he did like an 80s look that looks kind of like Gem or like Dazzler. And like, it's just so much fun. Like, this book, I just cannot even tell you how gorgeous it is. Like, I'm just so happy.
Wow, that spread looks fantastic. I thought it was really smart of you to do a centerfold. You know, like that's really taking advantage of the anatomy of a book, and especially a comic.
Well, I thought, you know, especially it was, you know, because of the Treasury format, I was like, gosh, this book is going to have a centerfold, whether it has a centerfold or not. So it might as well be gorgeous. And, you know, I had just, you know, fallen in love with Pink Lemonade, and I had interviewed Nick for the channel, and I thought his aesthetic is obviously perfect for Big Bang, you know, with his Mike Allred kind of retro 60s vibes. And I'm just like, I cannot wait to see the color version. I'm gonna lose my mind. I mean, that'll make a great poster too. I like art wise, this book is going to be beautiful, but it's also got some great stories too. So there's definitely a lot here. I think it'll appeal to new fans. I think it'll appeal to superhero fans. I think it'll appeal to Big Bang fans, Image fans, Kayfabe fans, retro fans, just fans of gorgeous art. Because I mean, it really is all over the place, from Marty Keene to to Jim Rugg. I mean, but it's all kind of amazing how it came together, and it came together, you know, doing my channel over the past couple of years, so discovering new books, discovering new artists and books through your channel and the Kayfabe community, and just like my other comic book communities. So it feels good.
That's great. That's the compass to like that I think you should rely on as you do creative work.
And I cannot wait to send you an ed your copies and have you flip through them on Kayfabe and lose your mind over the beauty of it. And pat yourself on the back for that amazing cover. Flip through your little trading cards. And so, what's next for Jim Rugg? Are you going to Heroes Con by any chance?
I am, absolutely. My next book is supposed to arrive today. I self-published a new comic book that has some nonfiction stuff, nonfiction stories in it that I've been running on my Patreon, and arriving just in time for Heroes Con debut. And then after that, I'll probably, if I don't sell them all there, I will probably have them on my website in the near future. It's called True Crime Funnies, and it has some wrestling stories, and it has a somewhat traditional true crime story set in the 40s with this narc agent. So yeah, I'll probably keep going in that direction with both wrestling stories and this true crime character, because there's a lot more of his story to tell. And I've kind of been going down a rabbit hole doing some research on this one particular character. So yeah, I'll keep doing what I do, which is a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it seems like you're the type of person who projects find you in a way.
They do. And you mentioned how fun this project is for you. I tend to follow, myself that way too. So we'll see what comes next, but I've been thinking about doing a painting of Stardust, the space wizard. So that might be closer to happening than not. And I've got a Red Room cover literally on my drawing table that I will be finishing up whenever we hang this up today. So, a lot of irons in the fire, as they say.
Nice. Well, it's good to be busy, and I'm so happy and thankful and amazed by your cover and contribution to the book. It's such a great book. The Kickstarter is launching July 15th. Jim Rugg is doing the cover and the trading cards. We have lots of great artists: Carrie Callan, Nick Cagnetti, a murderer's row of indie artists, and it's just going to be a great book. It's a love letter to Big Bang, Gary Carlson, Chris Ecker, and comic books in general. And so keep looking, subscribe to my channel, keep coming back for updates. I'm going to be interviewing other creators and people involved with the project. So definitely save your money for that Jim Rugg cover, because you're going to want it. After you see the little thumbnail here, it's going to be so good. Keep watching Cartoonist Kayfabe. See Jim at Heroes Con. Keep following all his great work, and go do some Big Bang research. Get ready for it. Get excited. Spread the word. All right. Well, I guess I better let you go and finish that Red Room cover. I wouldn't want Uncle Ed to be cross. So
it's a good one, man. It's the countdown. I've been doing those Red Room covers throughout the series, and this will be one left after I finish this one today. So I've been doing all covers based on creator-owned books that stand out, are important to me, that kind of thing. And you get down to the last couple, and now you've got to start making hard choices, because you realize, you can't do all the creator-owned books that you like. You got to pick and choose. And I have one cover to go. So it's kind of been interesting, not as much work as Ed, who wrote and drew the entire book. But at the same time, I've been doing these covers for a couple of years now. So we're getting near the finish line.
I think the Crumb one is my favorite one that you did. I think that one turned out really, really nice.
That was a very fun cover to do.
What one last question? Just I meant to ask you. Speaking of artistic choices, are there any baseball cards that landed on the cutting room floor, was there any Big Bang characters that you considered
No,
drawing or started drawing? I mean, you don't have to
no,
tell
I
me.
had a list. We had a list from the beginning, and I was gonna show these very quickly.
Oh
These
yeah,
were my
please.
like very first, like just get some reference sketches together because like it's such a big list of characters. So this was my first pass as like, I don't want to say a rough draft, but as a visual checklist of like which characters am I going to draw, and what are
Oh my
they
God,
what are iconic poses for these guys. So I had some fun with these. As you can see, I was playing with markers and just like very quickly dashing these out to have reference for myself, but also to try to visualize like how do I arrange these characters and their colors and things. And it turns out this wasn't as important since they weren't all composed in one image. Since they were trading cards, I could move them around. You remember, Michael, I sent you a slightly different version of this cover where the cards were arranged differently. And I started looking at it and I thought, oh yeah, I should move. This would be better if there was red over here, or like, the greens are all lumped together in this one spot. So it made those sketches not as important, but in the very beginning of the process, it was a lot to try to figure out like, all right, how am I going to arrange 9 or 10 or 11 characters together? And that was like step one, was let's get them all where I can lay them out in front of me and kind of see what their colors are and start to figure out, a visual relationship there.
Well, I would love to include those in the sketchbook section if you are willing, because they're actually really, really freaking cool.
They were very fun to do.
Yeah, I love that Berserkers bitchin'. All right, Jim. Well, I feel like I've taken enough of your time. Thank you so much for helping me announce this great project that I'm so happy you're a part of. And thank you once again for the beautiful cover. And everybody.